In the heart of the Arizona desert, where the sun blazed mercilessly and the wind whispered ancient secrets through the sagebrush, young Thunder Eagle stood at the edge of his Apache village, his dark eyes scanning the horizon with a mixture of anticipation and nervous energy. At 19, he was considered one of the most promising warriors of his tribe, his skills with bow and arrow unmatched by any of his peers. Yet today he felt as vulnerable as a child facing his first hunt. The elders had spoken, the arrangements had been made, and according to the sacred traditions passed down through generations, his bride would arrive with the next wagon train from the eastern settlements. Thunder Eagle had never seen the woman who would become his wife, but the tribal council had assured him she was young, beautiful, and willing to adapt to their ways of life. His heart raced as he remembered the words of his grandfather, Chief Standing Bear, who had told him that love would grow like the desert flowers after rain, slowly but with deep, enduring roots. The young Apache had spent weeks preparing for this moment, crafting intricate beadwork for his future bride, hunting the finest deer to provide meat for the wedding feast, and purifying himself in the sacred sweat lodge according to the customs of his people. But as the dust cloud on the horizon grew larger, signaling the approach of the anticipated wagon train, Thunder Eagle could not shake the feeling that something was different about this day, something that made the very air around him seem to shimmer with an otherworldly presence. The other members of his tribe had gathered behind him, their faces painted with ceremonial colors, their voices low and respectful as they discussed the upcoming union that would strengthen their bonds with the white settlers and hopefully bring peace to their troubled lands. Thunder Eagle's mother, Singing Wind, had tears of joy in her eyes as she watched her son prepare to take this momentous step into manhood, while his younger sister, Bright Star, giggled with excitement at the prospect of gaining a new city. The wagon train was now close enough that individual figures could be distinguished, and Thunder Eagle counted 3 covered wagons pulling slowly through the desert sand, their wooden wheels creaking under the weight of supplies and passengers. His pulse quickened as he tried to determine which wagon might be carrying his intended bride, his imagination running wild with possibilities of what she might look like, how she might speak, whether she would be frightened of him or welcoming of their arranged union. The lead wagon driver, a weathered man with a gray beard, raised his hand in greeting as the caravan approached the designated meeting spot, a flat area near a natural spring that had served as a trading post between the Apache and travelers for countless years. Thunder Eagle stepped forward, his ceremonial headdress catching the afternoon sunlight, his posture straight and proud despite the butterflies dancing in his stomach. The first wagon rolled to a stop, and several men climbed down, their faces dusty from the long journey, their expressions cautious but respectful as they approached the Apache delegation. Thunder Eagle's uncle, Brave Wolf, who served as the tribe's primary negotiator, stepped forward to conduct the formal exchange of greetings, speaking in the broken English he had learned during his own dealings with white traders. But it was the second wagon that drew Thunder Eagle's attention, for it remained closed, its canvas cover securely fastened, and from within came no sound or movement that might indicate the presence of his awaiting bride. The negotiations proceeded, according to plan, with gifts being exchanged and formal words of alliance being spoken, but Thunder Eagle found his attention constantly drifting to that silent, mysterious wagon. When the moment finally came for his bride to be presented, the wagon driver, a different man than the one leading the caravan, approached the covered vehicle with obvious reluctance, his hands trembling slightly as he reached for the canvas. Ties. Thunder Eagle held his breath, his heart pounding so loudly he was certain everyone present could hear it. As the driver slowly pulled back the wagon cover to reveal the interior, what happened next would forever change not only Thunder Eagle's life but the very fabric of reality as he understood it. For instead of the young maiden he expected, what emerged from the wagon was something that defied all explanation and challenged every belief he had ever held about the world and its possibilities. The creature that stepped down from the wagon was undoubtedly female in form, but she stood nearly 8 feet tall, her proportions perfectly human but scaled to a size that should have been impossible. Her skin was pale as moonlight, her hair the color of spun gold, and her eyes were the deepest blue Thunder Eagle had ever seen, like pools of sky water that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. She wore a simple white dress that somehow remained clean despite the long journey through the dusty desert, and when she moved, it was with a grace that seemed to defy the laws of nature, as if gravity itself bent to accommodate her presence. The silence that fell over the gathering was absolute, broken only by the whisper of wind through the sage and the distant cry of a hunting hawk circling overhead. Thunder Eagle felt his world tilting on its axis as he stared up at this impossible woman, his mind struggling to process what his eyes were showing him. The other Apache warriors took instinctive steps backward, their hands moving toward their weapons before catching themselves and remembering the sacred nature of the ceremony they were witnessing. Even the white men seemed stunned by what they had delivered, their faces pale and their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and bewilderment that suggested they were as surprised by their passenger as everyone else. The giant woman's gaze swept slowly across the assembled crowd before settling on Thunder Eagle with an intensity that made him feel as if she could see directly into his soul. When she finally spoke, her voice was melodious and perfectly clear, carrying easily across the desert air. Despite its gentle tone, she said simply, in English that bore no trace of any regional accent, "I am Sarah, and I have come as promised." The words themselves were ordinary, but the way she said them, with a certainty and presence that seemed to fill the entire valley, left no doubt that this encounter was far from ordinary. Thunder Eagle found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "You are, my intended bride." Sarah nodded slowly, her magnificent blue eyes never leaving his face. And in that moment, Thunder Eagle felt a strange sensation wash over him, as if he was being evaluated by some cosmic force beyond his understanding. The practical part of his mind screamed that this was impossible, that arrangements had been made for a normal woman, that there had been some terrible mistake or deception. But another part of him, a deeper part that connected to the mystical traditions of his ancestors, recognized that he was in the presence of something sacred and otherworldly. The tribal elders who had remained silent during this unprecedented revelation finally began to stir, whispering among themselves in rapid Apache while casting nervous glances at the towering figure of Sarah, Chief Standing Bear. Thunder Eagle's grandfather stepped forward with the dignity and courage that had made him a respected leader, his weathered face showing neither fear nor hostility, only the careful consideration of a man who had seen many strange things in his long life. He addressed Sarah directly, speaking in English out of respect for her apparent origins. "Great woman, we were told to expect a bride for my grandson, but we were not prepared for one such as you. Are you truly willing to join our tribe and follow our ways?" Sarah's response came with a smile that seemed to light up the desert afternoon, transforming her already striking features into something almost ethereal in its beauty. "Honored Chief, I have traveled far to be here, through paths that few could follow and by means that fewer still would understand. I come not just willing, but eager to learn your ways and to stand beside Thunder Eagle as his partner in all things." Her words carried a weight and sincerity that was impossible to doubt, yet they only deepened the mystery of who she truly was and where she had come from. The wagon drivers, clearly anxious to complete their unusual delivery and continue their journey, began unpacking Sarah's belongings, which consisted of a single large trunk that took 4 men to lift and several smaller bags that seemed to contain personal items. As they worked, Thunder Eagle noticed that none of them would look directly at Sarah, and they hurried through their tasks with the nervous efficiency of men who wanted nothing more than to be somewhere else as quickly as possible. When the lead driver approached Chief Standing Bear with the papers documenting the arranged marriage, his hands shook visibly as he passed them over, and he stammered out a hasty explanation about how Sarah had joined their wagon train at the last settlement, claiming to be the intended bride and presenting documentation that appeared to be in order. The documents themselves, when examined, proved to be perfectly legitimate, bearing the seals and signatures of territorial officials and matching exactly the arrangements that had been negotiated months earlier. Yet something about the entire situation felt orchestrated in a way that transcended normal human planning, as if forces beyond their understanding had conspired to bring this moment into being. As the wagon train prepared to depart, leaving Sarah behind according to the agreed-upon arrangement, Thunder Eagle found himself studying his extraordinary bride-to-be with a mixture of fascination and trepidation. She stood calmly amid the swirling activity, her towering presence somehow managing to seem both imposing and gentle, like a mountain that offered shelter rather than intimidation. When the wagons finally rolled away, disappearing into the desert haze, the Apache village was left to confront the reality of their new situation. Sarah's mere presence seemed to change the very atmosphere of the place, and Thunder Eagle noticed that the children, who had been peeking out from behind their parents during the exchange, now gazed at her with the open wonder that only the very young could maintain in the face of the impossible. That evening, as the tribe gathered for the feast that traditionally preceded a wedding ceremony, Thunder Eagle sat across the fire from Sarah, studying her in the dancing light of the flames. Despite her extraordinary size, she moved with perfect grace, participating in the meal with respectful attention to Apache customs, accepting the food that was offered to her, and responding to the tentative questions of the tribal members with patience and kindness. Yet there were moments when Thunder Eagle caught glimpses of something in her eyes, a depth and ancient wisdom that suggested she was far older and more experienced than her youthful appearance would indicate. When asked about her family and background, Sarah spoke vaguely of traveling great distances and leaving behind a life that no longer served her purpose, but she offered no specific details that might explain her extraordinary nature or unusual circumstances. As the night progressed and the formal ceremonies began, Thunder Eagle found himself caught between wonder and worry, uncertain whether he was about to marry a divine blessing or a beautiful curse. The tribal shaman, Old Wolf, performed the traditional blessing rituals with obvious unease, his ancient eyes darting repeatedly to Sarah as if trying to read signs and portents in her very presence. During the ceremony, something remarkable happened that would be remembered and discussed by the tribe for generations to come. As Old Wolf began the sacred chants that would bind Thunder Eagle and Sarah together in marriage, the flames of the ceremonial fire suddenly blazed higher and burned brighter, casting dancing shadows that seemed to take on lives of their own. The wind that had been barely noticeable all day suddenly picked up, swirling around the ceremony circle in a pattern that felt purposeful and directed, carrying with it the sense of distant places and unknown flowers. Sarah's voice, when she spoke her wedding vows, seemed to harmonize with the wind and flames in a way that created an otherworldly music, and several of the tribe members later swore that they heard the voices of ancient spirits joining in the ceremony. Thunder Eagle felt a profound change taking place within himself as he looked into Sarah's eyes and spoke his own vows, a shift in his understanding of reality that was both thrilling and terrifying. When the ceremony concluded and they were officially declared husband and wife, the very stars above seemed to pulse with brighter light, and the desert itself appeared to sigh with satisfaction, as if the earth itself had been waiting for this union to take place. The wedding feast continued late into the night, with Sarah gracefully participating in every aspect of the celebration. Despite the obvious challenges her size presented, she danced with the other women, moving to the rhythm of the drums with a fluid grace that made it seem as if she were floating rather than walking. And when she sang along with the traditional songs, her voice added harmonies that no one had ever heard before, but that somehow seemed to have always been missing from the music. Thunder Eagle watched his new wife with growing amazement, beginning to realize that whatever else she might be, Sarah was genuinely committed to becoming part of his world and his people. As the celebration finally began to wind down and couples started retiring to their homes, Thunder Eagle faced the moment he had been both anticipating and dreading since Sarah's arrival. Leading his new wife to the dwelling that had been prepared for them, he found himself overwhelmed by the surreal nature of his situation, walking beside a woman whose head rose several feet above his own, whose very existence challenged everything he thought he knew about the world. Their wedding lodge, which had seemed spacious when he had helped construct it weeks earlier, now felt almost cramped with Sarah's towering presence, yet she moved through the space with careful consideration, ducking her head beneath the support beams and arranging herself with graceful economy. When they were finally alone together, husband and wife, in the flickering light of the small fire that warmed their lodge, Thunder Eagle gathered the courage to ask the question that had been burning in his mind since the moment he first saw her. "Sarah," he said, his voice soft but determined, "I need to know the truth about who you are and where you come from. I have accepted you as my wife before my people and before the spirits, but I cannot truly be your husband until I understand what manner of being I have married." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, her blue eyes reflecting the firelight as she seemed to consider how much to reveal. When she finally spoke, her words carried the weight of profound truth and unimaginable sadness. "Thunder Eagle, my beloved husband, I am what your people might call a child of two worlds, born of union between earth and sky, human and something far greater. I have lived for more years than you might count, wandering between realms and searching for my place in the great tapestry of existence. I came to you because the spirits themselves whispered that in this place, with you, I might finally find the peace and purpose that has eluded me for so long." Her revelation, rather than answering Thunder Eagle's questions, only deepened the mystery, while confirming his growing suspicion that his life had become entangled with forces beyond mortal understanding. As they talked through the night, Sarah revealed fragments of a story that spanned centuries and crossed boundaries between the physical and spiritual worlds. She spoke of ancient civilizations that had risen and fallen while she wandered the earth, of witnessing the birth and death of mountains, of conversations with beings that existed in forms of pure energy and light. Yet despite the incredible scope of her experience, she assured Thunder Eagle that what she felt for him was genuine and immediate, a connection that transcended her immortal nature and touched something eternal within her vast and lonely heart. Thunder Eagle listened to these revelations with the growing realization that his life had taken a turn that would set him apart from other men forever, marking him as one chosen by destiny for experiences that few mortals could imagine or survive. As dawn broke over the desert, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, Thunder Eagle and Sarah emerged from their lodge as a true married couple, bound not only by ceremony but by shared understanding and acceptance of the extraordinary nature of their union. The other members of the tribe, watching the newlyweds carefully for signs of how this unprecedented marriage might unfold, were surprised to observe that despite the obvious physical differences between husband and wife, they moved together with a natural harmony that suggested deep compatibility and mutual respect. Over the following days, Sarah began to demonstrate abilities and knowledge that confirmed her otherworldly nature while simultaneously proving her genuine desire to contribute to the life of the tribe. She possessed an intuitive understanding of desert survival that surpassed even the most experienced Apache scouts, able to find water in places where others saw only barren rock and to predict weather changes with supernatural accuracy. Her knowledge of plants and their medicinal properties astounded the tribal healers, who found that remedies she suggested proved more effective than traditional treatments they had used for generations. Yet perhaps, most remarkably, Sarah began to display a gift for anticipating danger that would soon prove invaluable to the entire tribe's survival. 3 weeks after their wedding, as Thunder Eagle and Sarah were returning from a hunting expedition where Sarah's ability to track game had proven as extraordinary as all her other talents, they discovered signs of an approaching threat that would test not only their marriage but the very survival of their people. Smoke signals on the distant horizon told of raiders approaching from the east, a band of renegade soldiers who had been terrorizing settlements and Native American villages throughout the territory, taking what they wanted by force and leaving destruction in their wake. Thunder Eagle's first instinct was to race back to the village to warn his people and prepare defenses. But Sarah placed a gentle but firm hand on his shoulder, her blue eyes distant as if she were seeing something far beyond the visible horizon. "My husband," she said in the calm voice that had become so familiar to him, "the danger is greater than you know, and traditional preparations will not be sufficient to protect our people. These men who approach are not ordinary soldiers seeking only plunder, but servants of a darkness that feeds on suffering and grows stronger with each act of violence they commit. They have been drawn here by my presence, sensing the power that flows through me, but misunderstanding its nature." Thunder Eagle felt a chill that had nothing to do with the desert evening air, as he realized that his marriage to Sarah might have inadvertently brought catastrophe upon his tribe. Sarah seemed to read his thoughts and continued with gentle reassurance, "Do not blame yourself or me for what approaches, beloved. This confrontation was written in the stars long before we met, and it is precisely because we are together that our people have hope of surviving what is to come. The power that flows through me can be used for protection as well as other purposes, but I will need your strength and your people's trust to channel it effectively." As they raced back toward the village, Thunder Eagle's mind reeled with the implications of what Sarah had revealed, understanding for the first time that his extraordinary wife might be both the greatest blessing and the most dangerous challenge his people had ever faced. The village was already in the midst of urgent preparations when Thunder Eagle and Sarah arrived, with warriors checking their weapons and families, gathering their most precious possessions in case swift evacuation became necessary. Chief Standing Bear greeted his grandson with the grim expression of a man who had seen too many battles and knew the signs of approaching disaster. But when his eyes fell on Sarah, Thunder Eagle was surprised to see, not fear, but a strange kind of relief pass across the old chief's weathered features. "Grandfather," Thunder Eagle said urgently, "Sarah says the approaching danger is unlike anything we have faced before, that these raiders are connected to dark forces beyond our understanding." Standing Bear nodded slowly, his ancient eyes studying Sarah with the penetrating gaze of one who had learned to read truth in the faces of others. "I had hoped it would not come to this," the old chief said cryptically. "But perhaps the time, it has finally arrived for old secrets to be revealed and old debts to be paid." He turned to address Sarah directly, speaking with the formal courtesy due to a respected member of the tribe, but with an undertone that suggested he knew more about her nature than he had previously revealed. "Great daughter, the time for concealment has passed. Our people face extinction, and if you possess the power to save them, you must decide whether that power will be used, regardless of the consequences to yourself." Sarah's response came with a dignity and resolution that made her seem even more magnificent than before, her towering form radiating an inner light that was visible even in the bright desert sunshine. "Honored father, I came to this place seeking peace and love, but I have always known that some gifts come with obligations that cannot be ignored. I will do whatever is necessary to protect my husband's people, even if it means revealing aspects of my nature that I had hoped to keep hidden." As the day progressed and the smoke on the horizon grew thicker, indicating that the raiders were drawing closer, Sarah began to demonstrate abilities that transformed the tribe's understanding of what was possible in the world. She moved through the village like a force of nature, her presence somehow strengthening the defenses in ways that defied logical explanation. Weapons that she touched seeming to gleam with unusual sharpness, water supplies that she blessed apparently becoming purer and more refreshing, and wounded animals that she encountered healing with miraculous speed. The children of the tribe, who had quickly adapted to Sarah's presence with the resilience of youth, now followed her with the devoted attention of disciples, sensing instinctively that she represented safety and protection in the face of approaching darkness. Thunder Eagle watched his wife's preparations with growing awe and mounting concern, realizing that each display of her power drew them further from any semblance of normal life and deeper into a realm where human rules no longer applied. As night fell and the enemy campfires became visible on the distant ridges, Sarah gathered the tribal council and revealed the full extent of what they faced and what would be required to survive it. "The men who approach tomorrow," she told the assembled leaders, her voice carrying clearly through the still desert air, "are not merely human raiders seeking wealth and conquest. They have made bargains with entities from beyond this world, trading their souls for power and immortality. becoming vessels for a hunger that can never be satisfied. They are drawn to me because I represent the kind of spiritual energy they seek to corrupt and consume, but they do not understand that such energy, properly channeled, can also serve as their destruction. The revelation that their enemies were something more than human raiders sent murmurs of fear and amazement through the council. But Chief Standing Bear raised his hand for silence and addressed Sarah with the calm authority that had guided his people through decades of challenges. "What do you ask of us, daughter? What must we do to turn your power against these creatures of darkness?" Sarah's answer would change the course of not only the coming battle but the entire future of the Apache tribe and their relationship with the spiritual forces that shaped their world. "I ask for your trust and your faith, nothing more and nothing less. When the battle begins, you must not be frightened by what you see me become, nor doubt that the woman who loves Thunder Eagle still exists within whatever form that power might take. The energy that flows through me is vast and ancient, connected to forces that existed before the first humans walked the earth. But it responds to love and loyalty and the bonds that tie families and tribes together." Thunder Eagle stepped forward, his hand finding Sarah's despite the difference in their sizes. His voice, strong with conviction, as he addressed not only the council but his wife herself. "Sarah, my beloved, I have seen you grow flowers in barren sand and call birds from empty skies. I have felt the peace that surrounds you and witnessed the joy you bring to our children. Whatever you must become to protect our people, I will stand beside you, and I will help our tribe understand that you are still the woman who chose to make our ways her own." The night passed slowly, with the tribe maintaining vigilant watch while Sarah prepared for the confrontation. She knew would test the very limits of her abilities and perhaps reveal more about her true nature than she had ever intended to share. When dawn broke over the desert, it revealed a line of riders approaching across the sandy plain, their dark silhouettes seeming to absorb rather than reflect the morning light, their presence creating an unnatural stillness in the air that made even the desert creatures fall silent and hide. Thunder Eagle counted at least 30 horsemen, all heavily armed and moving with the coordinated precision of experienced killers. But what disturbed him most was the sense of wrongness that emanated from them, a feeling that these beings violated some fundamental law of nature simply by existing in the world. Sarah stood at the edge of the village, her magnificent form silhouetted against the rising sun, her blue eyes fixed on the approaching threat with an intensity that seemed to bend the very air around her. As Thunder Eagle joined her, he felt the ground beneath his feet trembling slightly, as if the earth itself was responding to the power building within his wife. The raiders drew closer, their leader riding slightly ahead of the others on a horse that seemed as unnatural as its rider, its eyes glowing with an inner fire that spoke of supernatural corruption. When they were still several hundred yards from the village, the leader raised his hand to halt the group and called out in a voice that carried clearly across the desert air, despite its unnatural, echoing quality. "We know you harbor one whose power calls to us across great distances. Surrender her willingly, and your deaths will be swift. Resist, and we will make your suffering legendary throughout these lands." Sarah's response came not in words, but in action that transformed the very nature of the confrontation and revealed the true scope of her extraordinary abilities. She stepped forward, and as she did, her form began to change in ways that defied description, growing not just larger but more luminous, her simple dress transforming into robes that seemed woven from starlight itself, her golden hair flowing around her like liquid fire, her blue eyes becoming twin pools of infinite depth that seemed to contain entire universes. The transformation was both beautiful and terrifying, inspiring awe in the Apache warriors who watched from behind their defenses, while sending waves of primal fear through the attacking raiders. Thunder Eagle felt his breath catch in his throat, as he realized he was witnessing his wife's true nature. Seeing her as she really was beneath the human form she had adopted out of love for him and his people. The being that stood before the raiders was clearly far more than human, a creature of such power and majesty that even the corrupted souls who had come to capture her hesitated in the face of her revealed glory. When Sarah spoke, her voice carried the authority of mountains and the wisdom of ancient forests, each word seeming to resonate with fundamental forces of creation itself. "Children of darkness, you have traveled far to face your destruction. I offered you the chance to turn back, to seek redemption for the evil choices that have brought you to this place, but you have chosen instead to threaten those I have sworn to protect. Now you will learn why creatures of your kind are taught to fear beings such as myself." The battle that followed would be remembered in Apache legends for generations, not as a conventional fight between warriors, but as a clash between the forces of light and darkness that revealed the true nature of the spiritual war being waged across the world. Sarah moved among the raiders like a force of nature unleashed, her transformed state allowing her to deflect their weapons with gestures, to heal the wounds of the Apache warriors even as they fought, and to turn the very desert against their enemies, causing the sand beneath the raiders' horses to shift and trap them while thorny plants erupted from barren ground to entangle their weapons. Yet for all her power, Sarah never lost sight of her essential humanity, calling out warnings to protect innocent lives and showing mercy even to enemies who had shown none to others. Thunder Eagle fought beside his wife with courage inspired by love and wonder, watching her navigate the balance between devastating power and compassionate restraint, understanding for the first time that true strength lay not in the ability to destroy but in the wisdom to know when destruction was necessary and when mercy served a higher purpose. As the battle reached its climax, with the surviving raiders fleeing into the desert and their supernatural leader facing Sarah alone in single combat, Thunder Eagle witnessed the full revelation of his wife's identity and purpose. The leader of the raiders, revealed now as a creature of shadow and flame rather than flesh and blood, unleashed attacks that would have destroyed any normal opponent. But Sarah met each assault with power drawn from sources that seemed to connect her to the very foundation of reality itself. In the end, it was not violence that defeated the dark entity, but Sarah's ability to show it the futility of its path, reflecting back to it the emptiness and self-destruction inherent in its choices until it simply dissolved, unable to maintain its existence in the face of such absolute truth. When the immediate danger had passed and the desert had returned to its normal state of peaceful emptiness, Sarah gradually returned to her human form, the transformation leaving her exhausted. But victorious, Thunder Eagle caught her as she swayed, his arms barely able to encompass her still impressive height, his heart full of love and pride for the incredible woman who had chosen to make his world her own. The tribe gathered around them, their faces showing a mixture of awe and gratitude that would forever change their relationship with both Sarah and the spiritual forces she represented. In the days that followed, as the tribe celebrated their miraculous salvation and began to understand the true nature of the blessing they had received in Sarah's presence, Thunder Eagle and his extraordinary wife settled into a new phase of their relationship, one built on complete honesty and mutual acceptance of the challenges their union would bring. Sarah's revelation of her true nature, rather than creating distance between them, had actually brought them closer together, removing the last barriers of uncertainty and allowing their love to grow into something that transcended the normal boundaries between mortal and immortal, human and divine. The Apache village became a place of pilgrimage for other tribes seeking Sarah's wisdom and protection, transforming from a small desert community into a center of spiritual power that attracted visitors from across the continent. Thunder Eagle found himself serving not just as Sarah's husband but as her interpreter and advocate, helping others understand that her extraordinary gifts were balanced by genuine humility and deep commitment to the welfare of all living things. Together, they created a legacy that would endure long after their time on Earth had ended, proving that love could bridge any gap, overcome any obstacle, and transform even the most unlikely union into a source of strength and hope for generations to come.